Welcome to my channel, K Fits My Life. So, as I told you guys all before, I talk about a lot of different topics on my channel, but this one is going to be a little different, but it still correlates to what I talk about a lot on the channel. Um, Growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, those of you who are watching who are XJWs know that we couldn't vote, we couldn't take part in any political part of the world because as Jehovah's Witnesses, you're supposed to be absolutely no part of the world. You don't put any faith in government, any faith in any man-made organization. So I didn't know anything, excuse me, at all about voting, the political process, how it worked. So I was talking to for my live stream after we ended, I was talking to this Miss Corletra Mance, and we talked about a topic about how important is it. Now I want to make sure everybody understands the title. The title is not how important it is for young Black people to vote. It's how important is it for young Black people to vote. What is the difference? So we can talk about both sides, whether it is important or whether it isn't important. Either way, we can talk about both sides of this conversation. And I'm joined today by the lovely attorney, Miss Corletra Mance. How you doing, Corletra?
Hello, how are you?
I am amazing. And we're also joined by a good friend of mine. This dude knows so much about politics. So I'm going to take my hat off to him a little bit and ask him a bunch of questions and pick his brain. He is a Microsoft SQL developer and consultant. It's my good friend, Bruce Beckley. What's up, Bruce?
Hey, how you guys doing today? Happy to be here.
Hey, man, I'm glad you could join us, brother. I really appreciate you. All right, so let's get this thing started. I don't know specifically how both of you all feel about this topic. So we're going in kind of blind and we can just talk about it and just develop the conversation. So I'm gonna put this out to our guest Bruce first, because I think me and Cece are gonna do this on a regular basis. And me and Bruce, actually guys, we're gonna be doing a whole lot more conversations with Bruce in the future. So please stay tuned to see him on the channel as well. But Bruce, I'm gonna pose this question to you. How important is it, in your opinion, for young Black people to vote?
Well, I think it's incredibly important. And I know that through like some of the conversations that I've had with any number of my colleagues in the workplace and, there's people out and about, just have general conversations. And, I don't really think a lot of people truly understand how important it is to, as a African American or Black person, to vote, because I think maybe in a way, I think that we're a little jaded with the process. Like we feel like maybe the process doesn't necessarily represent us. And some of those criticisms have some validity to it. However, even with that, nothing gets done without that vote. So, at the end of the day, like when you go cast your vote, like you literally are participating in this process. So without that vote, you have nothing. So even if you felt like you could maybe affect change in a different way, maybe creating like an organization to apply like political pressure to our politicians, our representatives, or if you felt like you could organize mass amounts of people to also apply political pressure in some form or fashion, it all still comes down to a vote. So, you have to exercise it, because at the end of the day, when you don't, like, there are people out there that are. And that's why we have the current political environment that we have today. Like, people that do feel like their vote matters are out there, they're mobilized, they're energized, and they're out there and they're making their voice heard, and their voice is being heard. And when you don't vote, which is like the lowest hanging fruit of, I guess, our citizenship, and like the main mechanism that we have to at least initially affect change in our government. If you don't do that, no one's going to listen to you.
All right. Good points, Bruce. CC, what do you think about that?
Hey, I agree wholeheartedly with what Bruce said. It's very important to vote, and you hear it all the time, like Bruce. Oh, our vote doesn't count. What's the point? Blase, blase, blah. So, all right, little history. The 15th Amendment is what prohibited the denial of African American men from being able to vote, right? Of course, once that happened, there were still quite a few hurdles. So I look back, even going back that far, you start asking the question, like, why, even with these voter ID laws that they're trying to put out there, why are they making it so hard for us to vote? If it's not important, why do you care if we vote or not? Why are you putting all these obstacles in the way? I think it's very important to vote, especially in your local House and Senate and congressional elections. So many people say that the vote doesn't matter, our vote doesn't matter, blah, 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 blah. But then you want to turn around, and a lot of things that people complain about in their community, that's local voting. That's voting for a district attorney. For example, Mike Brown in Missouri, gunned down. Police, of course, were not. Was that a? Yeah, were not charged. Um, Fast forward, and of course, I don't know if you all realize that in order to bring, the state has to bring charges, right? So if that district attorney decides not to bring charges, they're not going to bring them, or they can decide what charges to bring. The reason I bring that up is because that particular district attorney who had been there for years got voted out. They voted him out and put in a young black district attorney that's going to actually, and his goal is to make change. It was unheard of. People got out and realized, okay, wait, the local level, when we talk about policing, public safety, that's voting locally. That's voting for judges. That's voting for district attorneys. That's voting for your police chief. But people don't do it. And what's sad is your voter turnout for the most part in your local elections is much lower. And it's not like it's great in presidential elections, but it's a lot lower. And most of your changes for the community come from local voting. Even and then when you talk about it, it's just, we could talk about this for forever. It's so important. I mean, Hillary Clinton, yeah, she won the popular vote. So then you run into that whole, well, she won the popular vote. Why didn't she win? Eh, that's a whole nother issue with,
Right.
you start talking about electoral college and all of that. But what people need to realize is too, your midterms. These elections coming up right now are so important. Voting for your senators, the House and the Senate. If you want to swing aside, if you want to really get some decisions made, you've got to vote in these midterms. You got to vote for these people. And when you don't, and I tell people all the time, if you're not gonna vote, I don't want to hear you complain about anything. I don't want to hear it, because you didn't do anything. You didn't help. You hurt by doing nothing. So yes, I think it's very important. I think it's very important, especially for African Americans. Um, and I think the voter ID laws that they're trying to put in place are very discriminatory. There's a very good video to watch on why it's so discriminatory, because of course a lot of the communities that are being affected are your minority and black communities. Um, but anyways, I'll get off my rant for right now.
All right. You brought up a good point, CC, and I want to play DA, which in my case means devil's advocate. You brought up the fact that so many people fought for the right for us to vote, right? Here's my question.
I said that the 15th Amendment prohibited denying.
Right. Let's go back in time a little bit, because that brings up a good point that I've heard a lot of people debate about, and that is, should we vote simply as black people? Should we vote simply because of all of the things that have happened in the past that have allowed us the opportunity to vote, because there have been debates saying just because the civil rights movement happened and gave us the right to vote, that power could also be used in a way to vote, or it gives us the choice when not to vote. And so the debate that I've heard a lot is that some people, especially Black people, vote out of tradition solely, not because they specifically agree or disagree with any of the people who are candidates, but they feel like, okay, I'm Black, people have fought for the right for me to vote, so I should go out and vote. Do you think that there is a time when, as Black people, we should say, okay, I'm not going to throw my card, I'm not going to throw my hand in this game, for the simple fact that I don't think any of the candidates actually have our best interests at heart? Bruce, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's both. Like I don't think it has to be an or. You know what I mean? Like it can be an and.
Okay.
Like I think that you can, again, like I said before, like I think that's low hanging fruit, because like at the end of the day, it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long to register. It doesn't take long to vote. But like once you do that particular simple step, then you can go apply pressure elsewhere. But I mean, again, like it's almost like a house. Like power flows in the United States from the people, even though it doesn't seem like that sometimes, it does. And like it's like a house. Like the vote is the foundation of that house, and above that vote is your local officials, like CC said, like your DAs, like your city council members, like your local state senators, your local state representatives, your mayor. Then you're going down to your sheriffs, your other county officials, and then it goes up from there. Then it goes into your congressional districts, and it goes to like basically so your federal representatives, your federal senators. All these people that you vote for through the use of your vote ultimately make decisions based on what they feel their constituents, or what they should be doing, based on what their constituents feel is the best path. They should be listening to their constituents. And if their constituents are saying like, hey, we want people to do X, Y, Z, and enough people that have voted for these people want X, Y, Z, chances are your representative is going to do that. So when you don't vote at all, again, you're allowing other people that may not have interests that are aligned with your interests making that decision for you. So then you have situations where, you know, people are passing legislation that affects you, and you're like, what the hell? Like, you know, why do I have to do this now? Well, a bunch of these, you know, older generation folks who have religiously voted because they also understand how important that vote is, they've turned out and, you know, they made it known like, hey, we're here, and like our voice needs to be heard. We want this done. So like at the end of the day, like, yeah, I mean, I do feel like part of it is like, hey, people have given blood for this right. And I feel like, you know, I do think it would be a disservice to all those people that gave blood, like they gave their lives. And we're not even talking about the civil rights movement. We're talking about even earlier than that, have given their life for us to even have the ability to say no. I mean, you should do it on that, but also just for yourself. Like I vote not only because I feel like it's my civic duty in our quite flawed country, but I also do it because it's a pragmatic move to make. Like if I get a group of like-minded people, we're voting en masse in our district, and we get the person that we want to represent us, then my interests are heard.
Gotcha. CC, what do you think?
I completely agree with everything Bruce said. I mean, it's almost like, you know, and maybe I'm taking this too far. Like you can't educate yourself. You just decide, well, I'm not gonna vote simply because these people fought for me. Okay, but you don't want to educate yourself enough to know what's going on in your community, in the world. Um, to me, that's just lazy. It's just flat out lazy. Like you set your standards so low that you just don't care. So once again, don't come around complaining, crying about things that didn't happen. When you didn't even take the time out to educate yourself on the candidates. And then if you do educate yourself on the candidates, you're like, I don't like either one of them. You got a decision to make. But to me, ignorance or just, oh, I'm not going to throw my hat in simply because someone fought for my right is ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. And I think there should be, you should at least want to know what's going on, how you're being affected. Because at the end of the day, when people say, oh, well, they're not for us, it's not going to be just for Black people. That's what used to kill me, when people be like, oh, Barack Obama isn't our president. He's not for us. He's the president of America. You know, just like with these laws, it's not going to, well, but they do lean one way or another. Why? Because, like Bruce said, the constituents, the majority of people who are getting out there and voting, their reps are going to do more than likely what the people that voted for them want them to do, because they want to stay in office. Look at Trump. I, you know, it's a lot I could say, but my point, he's doing, the people that's voting, yeah, they voting, and they're voting for him, and they're going to keep voting for him because he's doing what they want him to do. Meanwhile, folks that's not voting complaining, well, you're not doing anything. You're not voting. Your voice isn't being heard. Trump, at the end of the day, wants people to like him. He wants to be popular, and he's going to do what that mass of people, and in this case, the Republicans who are voting for him, want him to do, or what they want. But no, I just, like I said, I think that's BS. Just I'm gonna just throw my hat in, and I don't know if you heard when you were gone. I said, quite frankly, it's just lazy and ignorant.
Oh, I heard that. I have you on speaker.
Okay, yeah. So,
So let me ask you guys this. I'm going to direct this to you first, Cece. Do you think that do you think it's completely wrong for, as you said, the president is not the president of just Black people, he's the president of all people? That's something I'm sure everybody realizes. Do you think that it is not out of the question for Black people to expect the person they elect to be able to do something solely for them in an instance where you see things being done for other groups of people that are solely for them? Say, there have been things done that was specifically for gay rights. There were things that were done specifically for transgender rights. There were things that were done specifically for immigration rights. But there may not be as many super meaningful things that are done specifically for Black people. And
like what?
Well, I'm asking you. I'm asking this question to you. This might be something. I'm playing DA. Yeah. So these are some arguments that people make. So when you hear something like that, what is your response? And do you think that is a reason why so many Black people may not vote, because they either don't know or don't see any of the things that are done specifically for Black people?
Once again, the first thing I ask them is, give me some specifics. Don't give me a general, well, they're doing this for gays. Okay, what is it specifically that you want to be done for Blacks that is just, can only be for Black people? What? And guess what I get? Silence. If you want to talk about, I may get every blue moon, let's talk about prisons. Okay, let's talk about prisons and how they're being filled up with Black people. Oh, you know what can change that? Voting for those DAs, those judges, those police chiefs, those sheriffs that are putting them in the system. Oh, that gets back around to voting again. But you don't want to do that. But that's something that specifically you're saying affects Black people. When someone gives me something relevant that can be done specifically just for Black people, and you don't have to vote to do it, let me know. I'm all ears. You know. So, and when you talk about immigration, and that's, you know, I do a lot of that. Once again, what is being done for the immigrant other than getting out of a detention center? I mean, is that what specifically or benefit are they getting that you don't have? I I want specifics. Like when someone comes at me with that, I need to know exactly, and then you need to be able to tell me how in the world that change can happen without you voting.
Bruce.
I agree. Like, I mean, and I don't want to sound like this rubber stamping, but I can't really disagree at all. I mean, like, at the end of the day, like when I've heard stuff like that, like it's kind of the same with CC. Like, I'm like, okay, so you get the question, like, what is like, just as an example, what has Barack Obama done for Black people? And it's like, okay, let's go through the logical processing of what is, like CC said, what exactly are the areas that would affect Black people. So for me, I'd be like education, of course. And I think at this point, that's probably for everybody at this point because we all got student loans. So like HBCU funding, of course, prison reform, law enforcement reform and oversight, and things like that. And then like all the other categories are all the things that like honestly mix up with all the other groups in the United States. Like those are like topics that we can talk about. And oddly enough, they still overlap with the vast majority of other people, with the exception of prison and police reform. It's probably very specific to us. But when it comes to immigration, I've heard that argument, like, oh, we shouldn't show any solidarity with, like, immigrants coming here and things like that, not knowing that, like, honestly, at the end of the day, like, in terms of the hierarchy in the United States, we're just one step off of where they are. Like, no matter how much progress we've had in the United States, like we're still trying to climb out of that second class citizenship, I guess, lane or whatnot. And, honestly, like immigrants coming here don't honestly affect us at all. Honestly, you hear rhetoric from like, Trump, like when he was on the campaign trail, he was telling all like, he's reaching out to Black people on one of his rallies. Like, what do you got to lose? Well, actually a lot, but he tried to like compare us to immigrants. He tried to like put us against Latinos and put us against newly arriving Latinos, put us against newly arriving Asians, wherever. And it's like, honestly, that does us a disservice to try to compare ourselves to them. Like, we're already an established class in this country. Like, a lot of the jobs that those immigrants do, those aren't jobs that we deal with. Like, a lot of us are professionals. A lot of us, work in corporate America. We have our own businesses. A lot of us don't, like our career lanes don't overlap at all in the areas that immigrants would have to deal with. So, I mean, like none of that like even makes any sense to me. But I mean, just to go back to the original topic, I mean, presidents generally do a lot. Like Barack Obama did far more than most people give him credit for. A lot more subtler shit, excuse my language, but a lot more subtler stuff. He got Eric Holder to launch investigations into police departments that were reported to have engaged in like indiscretions against like minority populations. He did the Am I My Brother's Keeper program. I mean, that's just a couple things off the top of my head. He actually worked to, I think he worked on funding for HBCUs. He worked on the student loan problem, a lot of areas that overlap with other groups in the United States. I mean, I think you just have to look into the details about, I guess, some of the legislative details and some of the other like press releases and things like that they have on like whitehouse.gov and all this other stuff to really see some of the like impacts that they make. But again, ultimately, like that's just like high level stuff. Like all that stuff still trickles down to the local level. So if you want any particular change in regards to, like, let's say, you're in a city where police are stopping minorities, or they're engaged in stopping and frisk. Like, well, you might want to elect, a new DA, elect a new police chief, elect a new mayor, a new governor that feels that, okay, this stuff isn't right. But if you don't do nothing, you don't do anything about it, other people that think you belong in jail will put their people in power, and you will be in jail. It'll be harder and harder to go and exercise your right to vote. I mean, look at the Voting Rights Act. Like, they pretty much, it's like a skeleton act now after Anton Scalia cast his vote with that stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on that presidents do, or they can do. Half the time, really, we ain't even paying attention in the first place.
True.
Facts.
Okay, guys. So we have somebody in the chat that already wants to call in, and I guess he has a question for you guys. His name is John Hill. John, I will put the number up. But here's the thing, guys. Anybody that's in the chat that wants to call in, I don't want the conversation to go left. I want the conversation to remain respectful. And we are talking about a sensitive subject. And as long as everyone can have an amicable conversation, I know Bruce and Cece, we're all good with that. We can do that, but I'm talking about opening it up to people that we do not know. And I can already see, John, you may not, I don't know if you're going to be able to be, my issue is I don't want anyone to get overly emotional in the conversation. I want the conversation to remain logical. And so I can see in the chat, John, you you already seem like you're a little triggered, brother. And I understand we disagree. We might disagree on certain topics. The point of the conversation is to be able to have an amicable conversation so that we can reach a real conclusion as to why this thing is going to be this way. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and put the number in the chat. We're going to continue our conversation. And when you call in, I'll allow everyone to hear what you're saying. We'll direct your question to the panel, and then we'll continue from there. All right. All right. So Bruce, really have a lot to say. And Cece, I have a question that I kind of want to direct to you for a moment. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, personally, and everybody that watches my channel knows I'm very, very transparent. I don't have a problem telling my personal life. That's the point of my channel.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I am unable to vote because when I was 19, I committed a felony.
Mm-hmm.
That was 24 years ago.
Right.
Now, I know, I'm sure we all know, it has to be a fact that several young Black people are not voting because they do not have the ability to vote because they have, in fact, committed a felony. So as an attorney, what do you suggest that someone in that position can do to get to a point, or is there something they can do to get to a point where they can have their right to vote reinstated?
Yeah. First, for the second part of the question, to be completely quite honest, I'm not sure what can be done other than just changing that law. I think it's a terrible law. My thing is what kills me. I pretty much call the criminal justice system the criminal system. I've taken the word justice out of it, and as an attorney, I shouldn't do that. But it's very difficult when they put up this justice system, innocent until proven guilty, which we all know, if you are African American, if you are Black, is the other way around. Guilty until proven innocent. That's just how it is. And I'm an attorney saying that, and I shouldn't say that. I should have more faith. It's certain things that still give me that hope, and that's why I keep going. But back to your question, that law, I've never agreed with it, because my thing is, if you do something wrong, no one's perfect, right? You do something wrong, you get in trouble, and then you are rehabilitated, you go to jail, and now you're supposed to be rehabilitated. So if I'm rehabilitated, then why can't I have my right to vote back? Like, and to me, once again, the whole throwing, especially black men in prison, you're taking away those numbers. Those are numbers. I'm not saying that those black folk are actually going to vote a certain way, Democrat. You know, they may be voting, but the point is, it's their right that's being taken away to do one way or another. Um, and I just do not agree with that. What can people do who, other than petitioning, trying to get that law amended, and in the meantime, talking to the millennials, talking to other young black people about the importance of, if you believe it's important to vote, the importance of voting, the importance of, look, man, it's already difficult for us. It's difficult for black women. I think it's more difficult for black men, but because there is a target on our backs, and it's hard, and it's frustrating. But yeah, I mean, that's something like that would just have to change. I don't agree with it. Because I understand how you can send someone away, say they're rehabilitated, okay, they're good, they're out, but then they can't vote. I you know I think that's, the two don't go hand in hand to me at all.
I thought I saw, I've researched it here in Nashville, and I
Mm-hmm.
saw something that said as long as I think you have one felony or one misdemeanor, you can pay a
There.
certain amount of money, and they
Mm-hmm.
will take that felony off. It was like $450.
So yeah, you're talking about, there is an expungement, yes, process where, and it depends on the type of felony. Right, yes, and you have to pay $450 depending on the type of felony. We're talking about low level felonies, D, E, and it can only be one. Then yes, you can get it expunged. Um, Depends on the felony.
Okay,
So people put it out there like, oh, it's just any D felony or any C. No, 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 no. There is a list. You can go to the clerk's office. There's a list. They will tell you if you qualify or not. Look at this list. If one of these is not one of the ones you committed, you don't qualify.
gotcha.
So, but yes, they do have that expungement, and they do like the expungement. Um, they'll do them like on Saturdays, where you can go and meet with a judge or an attorney, and they'll help you and assist you and educate you on what you can get expunged, that's on your record, and so forth. Yeah.
Gotcha. Bruce, what do you think about that topic, brother?
I mean, I'm I'm through and through a believer in uh, the right of the people. I mean, the consent of basically government rules at the consent of the people. Like that's the core of what I believe. And I mean, I don't believe that punishing people for serving time. Like we told them, like, hey, we want you to believe in this legal system where if you do something wrong, you break a law, you get this classification, a felony. You go to prison, you serve your time, you get out because you served your time, you're rehabilitated. Now all of a sudden, what I feel like is an inalienable right in a country that claims to be governed by the people, you take away that right. Like I don't believe that's a right you should be able to take away. Like if we're truly talking about justice, because justice is served the moment you surrendered yourself, you've served your time, and you've gotten out as per terms of your incarceration. Like there's absolutely no excuse for that. And I can't really gather my thoughts on like the history of that at the moment, but it's not exactly a noble reason why that exists. And it needs to be changed. And I know that it's different per state. So I think in Florida, it might be a little bit easier or something like that. In a couple other states, they're far more progressive with criminal justice reform. And again, depending on the felony or however those state laws work, you can get it expunged. But at least in the state of Tennessee, since I live here, it definitely needs to be changed.
Let me ask you guys this question. And this is something that even I had even said and had it written down as a question. It's coming through in the chat as well. Let me just read this exact message that this person put in here. Karima Ali says, I'm not wasting my vote if the candidate's not for me, period. Now, let me play DA again, because I'm good at playing devil's advocate. Let's say you're in a situation where someone says, hey, here's this shit sandwich, or you can take this shit pudding. They're both shit.
Right.
What is your choice? Which shit do you choose? Now, most people are going to say, I don't want either one of those shits.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you decide in a situation where you only have shit or shit, which shit to vote for? If you feel like both of the candidates are in fact shit.
Well, and not like I said 10 minutes ago, that's a decision you got to make at that point. If you don't agree with either person and it happens. And when I said decision, what I meant was you either make a decision to pick the lesser of the two evils or you don't vote. You know, once again, it's a right. It's not a requirement, clearly, or else we wouldn't be having this conversation. But my point is, if both candidates are shit, if they truly are, then I mean, hey, that's your prerogative not to vote. I mean, if it's just going to be a lose-lose, then
Hold on
okay.
1 second, CC. Is this John?
Yeah.
John, how you doing, man?
Yeah.
Can you guys hear John on the chat, on the panel? CC, can you guys both hear John? CC and Bruce?
A little bit, yeah.
All right. So, John, go ahead with your question or statement to the panel, please, brother.
I guess I want to stay on topic, try to be concise. It's more of a comment, I guess, more than a question.
Okay.
I was saying, I wasn't trying to disrespect or not trying to call less or, whatever you assume in the chat. It's just the tactics and the statements that these two individuals are stating are the reason, the young woman, she was stating, it's kind of, I put in the chat, I was like, that's the reason why people don't vote. Basically, she was kind of shaming people that don't vote. And I guess that both are kind of portraying that. You don't vote because, or you should vote because, people have died for it. And it really depends on circumstances. I really just fundamentally don't think they understand. Like the gentleman, he stated that he believes he believes, which is a key word is you believe. It's what you feel. It's not the facts. Like the system is based off of money. The constituents do not control policy. There's been multiple studies. There's a study by Princeton University that shows that whatever the constituents want as far as the federal level and mostly state level, that no matter how popular the policy is, about 30% of the time. So it could be 90%, like with gun laws, like people want background checks. It doesn't matter what the constituents want. It depends on who's donating to the candidate. So I think just in that realm, like he would say, he believes in the system. He believes the constituents control the system, and I guess he believes in that we live in a democracy, which we don't. That's my first comment, honestly. Actually, my second, because I said, y'all are kind of shaming people that don't vote. And third, there were some comments about Obama, what he did, and what he didn't do. I mean, I can go into some of the policies. I think the lady asked what specific policies do Black people want, or what they're striving for. I mean, if you're Black and you don't understand what black people want, and you don't understand their position within the the nation. Like the average black person is worth like maybe $10,000. And that's what like durable goods. I don't know if you understand that. Like in cities like in Boston, the average black person is worth $6 or $8. There's a study that came out by 2053 that black people will have no wealth in this country. Average black person. Like this is like data. This is not what I feel. This is not what what you believe. These are the stats. This is the black people in this country are at the bottom economically. So to sit in here and to talk about voting when it's really not addressing. People don't vote because it doesn't address their needs. People don't have the economic. They have no economic. They don't have no wealth. They don't have income. So the gentleman said that most black people are professionals. That's untrue. They're not professionals. Most are working class, or most, to be honest, especially black men, most are unemployed or in prison. Like, I don't think these two individuals understand just how bad how bad black people are in this country.
Hey John, what is your age? Just out of curiosity. What is your age? Just out of curiosity.
I'm 33.
Okay. I'm only asking because it has to do with a question I'm going to ask them later. John, I think that was a very, very well placed comment. I really appreciate you calling in, man. All right, man. Thank you. So, Bruce, CC, what do you guys have to say to that comment?
I'll go. All right. So let's just be real. I'm a pragmatist first and foremost. I'm aware, and I'm actually pretty damn educated on what I think that black people, want. Because, hey, I'm black. I'm not around white people 24/7. I'm black. I live in a black neighborhood. I've grown up around black people. And I'd like to first off say that, one, we're not a monolith. Like, we're still disparate groups of black people that all have variations of needs based on our location, our locality, and all based on our socioeconomic status, our education, our upbringing, all that stuff. So there's that. Two, in terms of economics, yeah, and I think I mentioned this before, and if you want to replay it back, John, you can. I also mentioned that there's immigrants and then there's us. Like, we're just still trying to climb our way out of this second-class status. I just do want to make it clear that I didn't necessarily say I believe in the system. I said I believe in more of the theoretical concept behind the system. I believe that government is supposed to rule at the behest of the people. That is a belief. Call it naive or whatever you want. That's what I feel, and that's what I think is the right way government should work. That being said, let's just take a stab at this economics thing. So ultimately, we're talking about policy and legislation. In regards to economics, who makes those decisions? I mean, like, who determines local policy around education? Like, who determines, if they want to break redlining in districts and properly value black homes and, black neighborhoods, so we don't fall victim to gentrification unfairly? Like, who sets education policy? Like, who sets, even just data points like job numbers? Like, who gives these companies incentives to, hire more black people? Going back to education, you had mentioned that the vast majority of Black people are either uneducated or working class. That may be true, but I mean, who builds those job programs? Like, who incentivizes ways for, I guess, that problem to be fixed? I mean, like, yeah, we could lean on, our local community leaders. We can lean on, corporations to do the right thing. We could, but ultimately they're all going to do the same thing. Like, they're all going to go lobby somebody in Congress to get what they want. And at the end of the day, like, even if you feel like your vote doesn't matter, it really does. And like, I think you mentioned a study by a Christian university saying that the vast majority of constituents don't feel like their representative actually represents their viewpoints or their needs. I actually counterpoint that. First off, let's look at the last election, 2016. Approximately 84 million people voted in that election. And that's not even talking about any local elections. I have no idea off the top of my head right now. 84 million people. There are 350 million people in this country. Well over half of the country never even told us what their viewpoint really even was. So how can we even really say that? That's not even a good pool to work with. And then just me being the data nerd that I am, I got to see what that population size is. I don't know what that means. 30% of what? 30% of, I don't know, Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's just kind of like, when you see those toothpaste commercials, 9 out of 10 dentists agree that this is the best toothpaste. Okay, what does that mean? That means nothing to me. It's not valuable. So getting back on topic, it's kind of like, okay, so let's say the vote's worthless. What other options do you have to affect change in your country? To get people that ultimately do hold the reins of power, that hold the power of the purse, that hold the power to make widespread, wide-affecting changes. Like, who else can do that? Who else do we rely on? And, just from my end, I'm not shaming anyone that's, choosing not to vote. I feel like you should vote because it's low-hanging fruit. But at the end of the day, if you're not going to vote, you should be doing something else, like pushing policy, pushing new candidates for those that do want to vote. We can vote for them, like doing something. And I would argue that the vast majority, at least people I've dealt with, that I've talked to locally, the ones that talk the most about not voting sit on Facebook all day, sit on Instagram all day, and they don't do anything but have a problem with voting. And it's just low-hanging fruit. I'm not saying that there aren't other ways to affect change at all. All I'm saying is it's low-hanging fruit, and it's a good opportunity if we got enough people out to get the right people that we want in place to actually affect that change. And furthermore, answer your question, Keith, about the shit sandwich. So what happens if you have two choices, a shit sandwich and an even shittier sandwich? How do we choose the lesser of two evils? My first question is, did you vote in the primaries? Did you try to affect change at that level? Did you try to actually put into place the people you want to actually vote for in the general? How many people actually vote in the primaries? Don't all raise their hands at once. The vast majority of people don't. That's where those people come from. They don't come out of a vacuum. They come from somewhere. Someone has put their hat in the ring in one of these two parties, or even three, or whatever party's primaries, and they're like, hey, I want to represent this party because I feel like I have the best shot. How many people vote in those primaries? I vote in them. There's a lot of areas that we can improve on. There's a lot of areas we can participate in to affect change going up. I guess they call that managing upwards in the corporate world. And it's possible, it's doable, but we're missing a lot of areas we don't even touch.
CC, can you reply? I think he was talking about, he thought that you were talking about shaming non-voters. What do you have to say to that?
Um, I would disagree. It's called constructive criticism. I think a lot of times people who don't believe in voting, when someone tells them the reasons they should vote or some of the benefits that come from, they get offended. Why the offense? I don't know. You know, these are other methods, and you don't have to agree. But if you feel shamed, then why? Why do you feel shamed? Just like he completely missed what I was saying when I said asking, well, he's I think makes a point about something about we should know what the issues are for black people. But like I said initially, I simply asked the question, what specifically do you want? And for me, I get silence. So you're throwing up stuff, general accusations with no specifics, specifically for black people. A lot of things, like Bruce was touching on, overlap. So once again, the conversations that I have, when people make those arguments, they never have any homework done, no specifics. They just want to be offended with no facts. Now he had done some research, and that's awesome. But shaming, no. These are things, like I said, there are other avenues. There are things that can be done, things that we can improve on. That's constructive criticism that someone should welcome. Um, that it's so much that can be improved on. And like Bruce said, if you're not gonna vote, then do something. Do something. Because at the end of the day, our system's not changing. We're just not all of a sudden gonna become a dictatorship or something of that nature. That's not gonna happen. So you literally have to strategize, get a plan, try to make something positive happen. But yeah, and I will continue giving constructive criticism and giving my opinion on what we can do to improve ourselves, our culture as black people. He made a great point. We still economically low, but I think that's another topic. I think a lot of that too comes from that uh crab like mentality, but we won't touch that right now.
Yeah, it's a whole other topic.
That's a whole nother topic.
It's a John. It is a whole nother topic. Let me respond to John real quick. John has given 2 super chats. John, I really appreciate you donating via super chat. I'll let you call in here in a moment if you want to call back. But let me ask a question. So if we were to say, as black people, one of the things that we wanted was fair treatment in the justice system. I think we all know it's a statistical fact that black people will serve more time and get harsher sentences for something that if a white person does the exact same thing, 9 times out of 10, a black person is going to get a much harsher sentence for than a white person. That could be one of the things that people say, hey, we want equality in this matter. As an attorney, CC, what would you say to that?
I've said it 2 times already. You know what changes that? Local voting. You know who's handing out those sentences? The judge. Vote their asses out. Put in a new DA. Get a new police chief. What? You got to get those people out, and you can't do that unless you vote them out.
So
that's the third time I've said it. Voting locally is very important.
Do you think that one of the main issues in this conversation is that a lot of people just don't know the process and don't understand the process well enough to know that, hey, if I go and if we get together and vote this person out, that things may get better? I would say, especially me with my upbringing, I knew absolutely nothing about the process of politics. I know nothing about it. And I would wager that a lot of people, and as you told me in our last conversation, I think you said the age range that votes the least in black people's between like 20 and 40. I think you said something like that.
Yep.
So that would mean that most of those people may just not understand the process well enough. And if that is the case, how do we go about instilling an understanding of the process in that age group?
So, I mean, that comes down to like, you're absolutely, yes, I think that's a big part of it. And I think the word ignorance means you just
Don't know.
don't know. You just
Right.
don't know. So, what can you do? Like you're saying, man, there's been a lot of different campaigns, nonprofits here in Nashville that are popping up. And I'll give you an example. A millennial who didn't believe in voting, just was like, not gonna do it. No, blah, 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 blah. Uh, Came to my office one day and was talking and was so excited. He had voted locally for an individual who ended up winning. And this particular candidate has actually made changes in his community. He was like, he said, man, so, and it didn't hit until he saw the changes. And it's like, it was a click, like, damn, voting locally really does work. It really does have something. But if you don't take out the time to sit down and talk with people, like we're having right now, these discussions, if you don't take out the time to educate yourself, if you don't take out the time, especially us who, you know, may be really involved in these things and other people aren't, to talk with people, tell them, hey, well, you can go on this website and read about this, or here's a pamphlet and here are the statistics on what we can do, or, you know, hey, this group right here. And I don't think we do enough of that. You know, I think I don't think we do enough of educating, um or just talking. I'm not even gonna say educating, just having a discussion, a healthy discussion about our viewpoints and things that may or may not benefit our community. But yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. They just don't know. And they're listening to I was reading an article today about how especially with the millennials, you know, your social media, Facebook, Instagram, is forever pushing and putting in millennials' heads, especially blacks, how voting is not important and doesn't help. And they're just pounding that into their heads and saying this and saying that. And at repetition, after so long, you start believing it. And a lot of people literally look at Facebook like it's the news, which is, you know, they go to Facebook for the news and they believe it. So,
Bruce, what do you think about that topic, brother?
Well, I think it's a combination thing. It's kind of complex, honestly. But firstly, it's intent. Like, you got to want to educate yourself first off. Like, if you're already convinced that, you know, it's not really worth your time to like to kind of get the basics down on how the political system works and how you can get involved in it. Like, honestly, those individuals are going to be the hardest to reach. I mean, I can't lead a horse to water. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I can lead you to the door, but I can't walk you through it, kind of situation. And you know, that's unfortunate. There's always going to be a percentage of people that are always going to be that way. But for those that they may not vote because, you know, a lack of knowledge. I mean, I say just you got the largest repository of human knowledge at your fingertips. Like, we live in an amazing age of information. Like, hit the internet, man. Hit Google. Like, hit your local state and be like, how do I get involved? Like, how do I register to vote? What is a DA? Like, what is a senator? What is a representative? Like, how do they affect me? Like, what is the hierarchy of government? And get a good understanding of that. Look up your local officials. Ask what like the city council does, and like how what the city council does affects your day to day. I had a conversation with a good friend the other day, and you know, we were talking about how politics affects your day to day, whether you want it to or not. Like, the world's gonna move, and the world's gonna turn with or without you. And you know, it's very true. Like, it doesn't really matter, frankly, Just kind of going back to that topic, like if you don't like the vote, like the world's gonna turn and people are gonna go and they're gonna exercise their right without you. And I mean, I wouldn't want to be left behind. I at least want to know what's going on. Like when I look at the news, whether it be Facebook, Google, Reuters, AP, BBC, whatever, like I want to be able to understand what I'm looking at and then make a decision based on that. It's called an informed decision. And you want to be informed enough to feel confident enough if you should decide to vote. And also be able to attend a town hall if the people running, put them out there. Go to a debate if they have them. And ask questions, call them out, put them on the spot. Like that's well within your right to do so. And if you never exercise it, you never have to answer for that stuff. But if you don't know that you could do that stuff, you'll never do it. You'll think it's a waste of time. Like, I believe that we have far more power than we exercise.
Let me ask you this, Bruce. Now, I grew up in North Nashville, right near what we used to call Dodge City, the projects over there by Metro Center. I grew up right across the street from Dodge City. I saw 2 or 3 people get shot in my yard, actually. My neighborhood was bad. And I grew up for a long time. I was still in that same neighborhood. But I was unaware of any types of town meetings, any types of political conversations. I did not know that any of those things were actually taking place. And I'm sure that a lot of other Black people may not have advanced knowledge that these things are happening. Now, I can play devil's advocate again and say, just how many Black people actually in that age range actually even care? But let's say they do care, and we are just unaware of these meetings and these conversations that do happen, because we all know, like now I live in Green Hills, not because I just wanted to move out. I just found a really cheap place in a really nice neighborhood.
Right.
So I was like, I'm jumping on it. But the difference in this neighborhood, I can go out to my mailbox and every day they will give me a letter telling me when a town meeting is happening. I haven't been to one, but in this area, they all know when a town meeting is happening. There was a rash of robberies in this neighborhood. It lasted about 1 week. In my mailbox on the Friday of the week that it started, there's a town meeting Saturday, tomorrow, with the police department, so we can figure out who's out here robbing in this neighborhood. They found those people within 3 days, and there hasn't been anything since.
Man.
Now, in my old neighborhood, people get robbed and shot and killed all the time. And it's like, oh, well, we're used to it. So what can be done in order to inform people in that age range who don't live in a neighborhood where the information is being pumped to them? Like, hey, we're having a town meeting about this topic. We have a town meeting with this topic. We're having this person who's running here and he wants to talk to you guys. How can people get plugged in to find out this information when these meetings are going to take place? CC. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bruce. Go ahead.
Okay. Couple things.
Oh, I mean, hold on. CC's like, man, Bruce just talked.
Oh, go for it, CC. It's all you.
Go ahead, CC.
Bruce knows more about this area. What I was gonna say, I'm just gonna make a quick point on that. One thing, because I lived before I moved downtown, I lived in Antioch, and our councilwoman out there, she was amazing. Like Jacobia McDowell, that was her name. Jacobia, man, you're talking about was on it. She was active. She would keep everyone updated on what's going on in Antioch. Hey, there was a robbery here. Hey, there's litter. This litter's been here for 5 days. So my point was going to be having a dedicated councilman or woman, from what I've seen and experienced, is very important for things like that.
Gotcha.
And that comes, you have to vote them into.
Point made. Point made. Bruce.
Oh.
I agree with that. Dang, I hate like I'm rubber stamping everything, but I can't help but agree. But like, right, like okay, so from a technological standpoint, so let's bring it all the way back. Before we do that, I just want to mention like my background so people don't think that I'm being elitist or something like that. I'm some suburban kid. I'm originally from Inkster, Michigan. That's the hood, if anyone knows. We moved to Akron, Ohio, to the hood. We moved from Akron, Ohio, to Nashville, to Bellevue, and then I moved over to 26 and McKinney, over there, right next to Dodge City.
Yeah, right down the street from me.
Right next to that AME church, right there.
Right, I lived at the bottom of the hill from that AME church.
Yep, I lived at the top in them duplexes. And I just want to put things in perspective because, like, I don't want anyone to think that like I'm coming from a privileged place or something like that. Like, I grew up in the same area, I grew up in the same neighborhoods. I've had to do all this stuff on my own. I currently live in North Nashville. I live with my people. So just getting that out the way. From a technological standpoint, there is Facebook. There are people. There are events all the time on Facebook that are posted that tell you about council meetings and council people having like town halls or other representatives having town halls. For my neighborhood, I use Nextdoor. It's an app on the Google Play Store. It's on Apple Store or whatever. It basically organizes users by their neighborhood and allows them to communicate with one another. And the cool thing that I found about that is people are active on that thing. Like, I live in the Whites Creek area. It's about as close as I'm gonna tell y'all where I live at. But like, basically, man, people out here are active. So just the other day, looked at my Nextdoor app. Somebody was talking about like this strange red truck driving around. I guess the truck drove up in someone's driveway and was trying to rob them or something like that. Man, everybody was on that talking about we're gonna meet with the MMPDE. We're gonna talk to our council person. On that app, they frequently talk about their council people, their local officials. Here's this, here's that. Here's the next HOA meeting. Here's the next police meeting that they want to have, a community engagement meeting they want to have, or whatever. Here's the next meeting with like state officials. Here's the next open session of the legislature. All that stuff is posted. It's all available at my fingertips. Now, in a vacuum where, hey, I want to know, but I don't know, I mean, I'm just going to go search. I'm going to go to Google, type in Nashville political events. I'm going to go track down my councilman. I'm going to give them a call. Like, they're available. They're not that far from we are. Like, they're available. They can be talked to. I'm gonna send shoot an email to my local congressional representative's office. I'm gonna go send a letter to the mayor. I'm gonna use all of my resources available to me to find out the information that I need. That's just me. I just know that when I guess I'm a pragmatist. If I want to know something, I'm gonna go get it. And if it means something to me, it's going to get done. And I just think that, like I said before, we have a wealth of information at our fingertips. Like, we can go find whatever we want. If I can go find cat videos on Facebook, I can go find out who my elected representative is.
CC, let me ask you a question. And great points, Bruce. Now, forgive my naivete if this is incorrect, but it seems like women are much more involved in things like that than men. I may be wrong, but it seems like, from a standpoint, women seem to be able to organize themselves to do things and in a much larger scale than it seems that men can be able to get together and do things. Now, is there some type of dynamic or some type of statistic that shows the relation or the correlation of how many women are actually out and voting, Black women, as opposed to how many Black men are actually participating in the voting?
So I'll give you an example from, I actually pulled this stat, the election down there in Alabama. where you had, and I'm looking for it so I don't mess up the wording. Then everyone was saying, the black woman's the reason that uh, the Democratic candidate got in. And it was. So for some reason and I don't know why, but in that particular instance, I don't know why I can't find it. I purposely wrote it down. Um, in that instance, it was a great example of showing how black women are out there voting in larger numbers than black men. Why is that? I'm not a man. Um, I think for me as a woman, um, I see the changes that can be made for our black men because black men have it very hard. Black men are constantly being put in prison, constantly being targeted. So more than the black female, we get targeted, but it's nothing like you all. And so, for me, it was one of those things wanting to help our men as part of it. And then two, just I don't know, black women do tend to get out and vote in higher numbers than men. I don't know why. I don't There it is. Okay, so it said that the results showed that 98% of black women and 93% of black men voted for the Democratic candidate Jones. Granted, the black population in Alabama is only 26%. That statistic was because showing that voting in local elections matters. They won because of the high percentage of the black women's vote. He won by a 1% margin.
Mm.
It was very close. I don't know why, and that's the first Democrat senator they've had in 20 years, in over 20 years. I don't know, but you're right, and I even with the young man that called in, I tend to run into um, more negativity towards voting from black men, more so than black women.
Interesting. Bruce, why do you think black men don't vote in the numbers that black women vote in?
Honestly, I don't even want to speak for all black men. Um, that's going to be a very response, honestly. I just think there's an inherent distrust in the system, and I think there's validity to it. I'm sorry, there is. I mean, how can you? And I'm gonna play a little bit of devil's advocate here, but how can you trust a system that doesn't protect you? It makes all these claims about justice, all men are created equal, and when I see that in practice, it's not. It doesn't. The words don't match up with the actions. Kind of like what was said before. A white perp or whatever in a criminal situation is going to get less time for the exact same time, same record as the black one. And, you call that justice? I am walking down the street and I'm living in a city that has stop and frisk. And the police have the right to just racially profile me just because they want to. It's because they think I look suspicious. And I get humiliated on the curb because some cop says I fit the description, or maybe they just feel like messing with me that day. There's no trust. And this same system will do everything in its power to take away all the rights that it claims to guarantee everybody. I can understand why there's a distrust and a general apathy and negativity towards the vote, because kind of like John was saying, I even saw in the chat. Yeah, I've been keeping up with you, John. I even saw in the chat that he was like, well, so why vote? As much as I feel like, that is a method and a valid method to change the system. I understand. in a lot of ways. And I'm just going to address something because I saw the chat too. Miss Kareem Ali, basically begging your oppressor to treat you nice. Well, I guess that's one way to look at it. But the thing is, I'm not begging anything. Like, I'm trying to take it. And for me, what I see is I want to, I guess, proverbially stack the courts in my favor. Like, I want people that, at this point, really, I don't even care if they look like me. It'd be preferable. But if not, I want someone to at least be in line with my thinking. And if we have to live in a system as such where an individual represents thousands of people, I want someone that's going to line up with me the most. And I mean, outside of, at this point, armed revolution or mass protest or civil unrest, which I'm sure, you know, some individuals might, you know, advocate for that. I'll keep that to myself if I do or don't. I mean, that's just one route through amongst many.
Right.
But I understand the frustration with the system. It's righteous. It's valid. Very much so.
It's completely valid. And
Yeah.
CC, let me direct this question to you.
Before I said I call it the criminal system. I took the word justice out. I said that 5 minutes to this conversation.
Let me ask you this, CC. In light of the current state of the country, right? We have so much evidence of Black people being treated poorly in the justice system. We have so much evidence of Black people being treated poorly by the police. We have so much evidence of whether or not, like Bruce said, that we have some type of equality and justice. We have so much evidence of us not actually being granted what they say we have. It's no surprise that so many people in the age range we talked about do not have any faith in the voting system. But with that being said, what do you think can be done to actually instill some sort of confidence in people of that age group to actually feel comfortable enough to trust that their vote actually matters and will actually change something?
I think they'll have to see some change. Like I was saying earlier with the young man that was in my office, his whole mindset of voting changed when he saw a positive change come about from him voting, that person getting elected, and that person doing what they said they were going to do for his community. But it took him to actually seeing change until, you know, the millennials see change. Well, is you can talk to you blue in the face. I can keep talking, but actions, seeing things are going to have to be done, because it's times I'm sitting in court or I'm sitting there looking at the TV at the next shooting, you know, that happens or is about to happen. In my head, I'm thinking, well, I start thinking, and it's negative thoughts. It's like, well, this won't be another one to get off, and it's a surprise when someone is actually convicted.
Right.
You know, and it shouldn't be that way, but I'm surprised. I'm pleasantly surprised. You know, and then you start altering your mindset. Well, why did the state? And that's something else. And I honestly feel like they do it on purpose. Some of these states' attorneys will go for first-degree murder, knowing good and well they're not going to get it, knowing you could have put him away for at least 5 years if you had done, like, put him away. Don't let him walk. Yeah, let him get tortured or something. Anyways, but I just, you know, I think they will have to see change. I think they're going to have to see something positive happen.
Gotcha. All right. Bruce, do you have anything to say to that? I think John is about to call in a few. But go ahead and give your response, Bruce. And if he calls in, I'll just have him there. And when you get done, we'll allow him to ask his question.
Well, I think that for the most part, no one really believes much of anything until they see some like tangible results. And I mean, that's valid. I mean, you're not going to tell me the sky is blue unless you can prove it to me, right? Like, you're not going to, and maybe I'll be touching the point on this one. You can't tell me the earth is flat unless I see some walls around the world. See what I'm saying? So, I mean, I'm real big on evidence too. I get it.
Touche, Bruce.
But like, at the end of the day, like, there's nothing wrong with, like, you know, being skeptical until, you know, you see something happening around you in your locality that affects you. And I think the problem with our system is, and kind of like I think CC touched on it, is that doesn't happen enough. And you really only truly believe that anything can come out of anything until you see it. I mean, there's nothing really to really dispute there. I do want to address one thing. So Karima, because I'm like over here looking at these comments. Miss Karima had said that we need our own everything at this point, our own police, our own banks, our own schools, our own hospitals, everything. And I think she emphasized everything in caps. That's a touchy subject for me. I think in a perfect world, it'd be great. It'd be great. I guess, like, I'm really on the fence about going back to the days of essentially separate but equal, because that's essentially what that's advocating. And we know, excuse my French, damn sure that ain't gonna happen here. It ain't ever gonna be separate and equal. We always gonna get scrapped. And at the end of the day, if we do start something, if somehow somebody's gonna destroy it. Not saying we shouldn't try again for like the 5th time or the 8th time or maybe the 30th time, I don't know. But ultimately, like, owning your own police, your own banks, your own schools, your own hospitals, unfortunately, that doesn't address like the elephant in the room, which is power politics, real politics, which is still dealing with people that make the decisions. And we're going to have to deal with these folks. Like, we're going to have to deal with people that don't like us. Like, we can have all of these tangible assets, like everything you're talking about, but we still got to deal with decision makers. And I feel like at the end of the day, we should be focusing on putting in people that are going to make decisions on our behalf. Then it'll be easier to own, you know, all our own stuff. It'll be easier to have more control over our neighborhood and not be hamstrung by a bunch of legislation designed to prevent the very thing we're trying to do, which just happened in the first place. So it happened, that's what allowed Tulsa to happen. That's what allowed Rosewood to happen. That's what allowed all these successful, hell, even in Nashville, like, what was it? I-65 goes right through the middle of essentially the Black Renaissance area in Nashville. Like the reason they could do that is because they had the political power to do so. How could you stop them? How?
John, you're on the phone. What's your comment or question?
Okay, I just want to respond because I mean, that's really some stuff on line. But let me like, I'm gonna pick up on the point of the woman saying that, you know, she said the right thing. She said that we need political education, but then she said, no, we don't need that. We just need to talk. No, I will go back and say we need political education. The reason I'm not against voting. I want to make that clear. What I'm against is giving away your vote when you don't control the narrative, when you don't control the agenda, and you don't control the narrative or the agenda because people are not political educated. They don't know what's going on within the political system. They don't understand how the political system works. Y'all address this. Y'all said this multiple times. Y'all keep going to that point. But then you just say, well, then go vote because vote for the lesser evil. Or you go vote for the candidate you feel that has your, has your agenda. But this is what I'm against because before you get to that process, you must be out here, advocating. You must be out here politically active. You must be creating your own candidate. The way y'all are explaining this is the reason why people don't vote. This is what I'm trying to stress. Y'all are saying, well, just read AP, read CNN, and, make a decision, whether it's local or federal. You said it about the Doug Jones. That was a federal, that's for the Senate. That's a federal election. That's not local. And I'm seeing, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I see y'all, how naive y'all are in this subject, because y'all are regurgitating the talking points. The whole black woman got Doug Jones in is a talking point. As you stated in the statistics, 98% of black women voted for Doug Jones, but also 93% of black men voted for Doug Jones. You're not giving me numbers. You're not telling me how many black women, how many black men. You're just giving me a statistic, and since the statistic is 5 points more, it was black women was the reason for Doug Jones getting in. Like, the whole reason why I'm frustrated about hearing this conversation is because I'm hearing individuals that, if you are politically active in your areas, y'all don't understand the problems that face this community. You don't understand that every problem that faces the community is economic. And you said that, and y'all said that, that was a whole different conversation. No, that is a conversation. If you don't have economic power, you have no power. You can have all the rights in the world. You can have all your gay rights. You can have all your trans rights. You can have all your voting rights. But if you're a homeless individual, you have no rights. You have no power. So the problem I see is people continuously are just regurgitating the propaganda, because honestly, cable news and your local news is just propaganda. They're not informing you. They're not giving you political education. They're not telling you what's going on in communities. And this is why when you said that in your community that you didn't know, like, the people were getting shot, and you didn't know if there was town halls. But you don't have those resources because y'all don't have it, because in that community there's no economic power. There's no resources to even give you that information. This all goes back to, what is your economic status? If you don't have economics in this country, you have no power. If you have no economics in the political sphere, you have no power. You can feel, you can believe, none of that matters. What matters is who is paying who is contributing to that candidate, and that is the agenda. It has nothing to do with voting. Y'all brought up the 2016 election, the election that was highly rigged and highly manipulated from the media standpoint, from the Democrat standpoint, from the Republican standpoint. You don't pick these candidates.
Okay, hold on, John. Let me let the panel weigh in on your comments you just made presently. I'll leave you on. I'll just take you off speaker for a minute. I'll let them reply to what you just said. Myself. Okay, I got you. All right. So, guys.
Yeah, I want to interject on that one. I think we're conflating a lot of different points here, because, like, I hear. Okay. So, all right. So I'm gonna address one thing I heard.
And then we'll make one thing, because Cece's like she about to bust out of her skin right now.
No, I gotta leave. So,
oh, you gotta leave?
Yeah. So
you leave right now?
In like 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, we'll let you go ahead and say what you need. If you have a rebuttal to that, go ahead and make your point, and then we'll go ahead and let you go, and me and Bruce will finish out the conversation.
Okay. Cool. I guess my rebuttal was gonna be one. I don't know if he missed the part where I said I was speaking from experience, not looking at the news and CNN. I specifically stated talking about a young man in particular, and there's been others. So don't make the assumption that I'm getting everything rhetoric. I've seen things for myself. I am out there making footwork, trying to make a difference. You made the point that I said at first, education, talk. What I said was we need to have these conversations like we're doing right now. But I also said you need to educate yourself. Get out there, do something. And I think Bruce made that point. You don't want to vote? Fine. and you said you're not against vote, not that you're not against voting, but and I also said too, as far as the lesser of two evils, no, I said you have a choice. So, I think you took a lot of what I said and mashed it up together, but you missed some of the high points that it's not rhetoric. There's also personal experiences, and that's what I'm talking from. Because the news here in the United States is completely different than if you're in another country and looking at the United States. I know that, you know, but that's all I'm gonna say because we'll be on here another 45 minutes and I gotta go.
All right, well,
Thank you,
CC,
John.
we'll have you back on for the next one. I'll give you a shout later on and see when you're available, but we'll have you back on for our next discussion. And
All
thank
right,
you
y'all
for
have a
joining
good
us,
night.
CC.
All
All right, talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. All right, Bruce.
All right, so yeah, I got a couple of rebuttals. So I think we need to take a step back and make sure we're not having this conversation in bad faith. Like first off, like I agree but disagree with you, John. But let's be clear about something. You may feel a certain way, but don't come sideways saying that we're naive about anything. And you can put him on, he can talk, whatever. That's cool too. But like at the end of the day, one of the first things that I had said was, how many of y'all vote in primaries? I said none of this stuff happens in a vacuum. Like none of this stuff, like none of these people come out the blue. Like there's literally a whole process. And I'm like, the first question I asked is how many people are involved at the beginning? Like how many people have tried to jump into the primaries or, actually vote in the primaries to get the person they want to represent them at the party level? Like, and I also said, like, don't raise your hands all at once because I already know the answer to that. And two, we get it. Economics does play a large part in our political system. And I don't really think that I or Cece has really denied that point. Like, I don't think that's happened once this entire conversation. But honestly, economics does marry with politics. Politics is power. So at the end of the day, yeah, you might have to have economics. I mean, obviously, companies lobby Congress so that representatives will push legislation their way and everything like that at the federal level. It happens at the state level. But the most impactful change you can make is at the local level. I mean, you can throw millions of dollars at a candidate and still lose. You get enough people that actually they feel passionate enough about an issue, they can make that shit happen. And they can beat a war chest. And it is plenty of historical examples for that. So yes, economics does play a part, but it's not the only part. I just don't want to conflate. I don't want to conflate all these issues into one thing. So Karima said we're all naive to one thing or another. The system is extremely broken. Well, yes, the system is broken. For you, for me, really it's operating as designed, honestly. Like it really wasn't made for us. Like we weren't at the very beginning of this country's founding. We haven't been involved in all the legislation that shapes this country. And that's a fact. I agree with that 100%.
Hey, Bruce, let me ask you this question in light of what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of liken our situation as Black people in America to, those of us who have kids, or even you, if anyone has a kid and you have built a house and that child lives in that house. Let's say that child has been living in that house for 15, 16, 17, 18 years. And at some point, that child says to you, I want to be able to do whatever I want to do in this house. As the parent, the person that built the house, it doesn't matter the age of the person, you're only going to have so many rights in that house because it's not your house, it's your parents' house. And I feel like that is almost the same way that America is for Black people. We are here, but we are never we may never have the same rights as the people who actually built America. Because as you said, America was not built for us. So in light of that, which I think we can all pretty much agree on, that is a fact. I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where we have complete and total equality as the people who actually built America. No. So in light of that fact, what do you think can be done to at least get to a point where people, Black people specifically, feel comfortable enough to even feel like we have a chance at some type of equality in America? Because this, as you said, the system is broken. I don't think it ever will be fixed completely in our favor. Having said that, what do you think is the best course to at least feel comfortable in the House as a whole, to feel comfortable enough for enough of us to vote regularly, especially in the age range that we're talking about?
I don't think there's just one avenue through which that we can really just do that. Oddly enough, I agree with John that yes, economics plays a large part of that. It really does. But here's where, I disagree with his hammering on that point. We can multitask stuff all the time. We do it all the time. I can tie my shoe and breathe at the same time. I can economically put myself in a better position to influence my representatives while also influencing people in non-economic ways, because at the end of the day, the vast majority of people don't have money. They're not going to have billions or millions of dollars or thousands of dollars to even, be able to influence their representatives in that capacity. But we do have numbers, and those numbers can show up and do show up locally, which does feed into state, and then it does eventually feed into federal. And, there's just not one path, there's not one golden bullet that's gonna solve all of our problems. That's incredibly complex.
Of course.
I'm not even gonna claim to know all the answers on that one. I don't think anyone on this call, chat, or otherwise can honestly say that.
I agree with you. In light of saying that, what do you think is one of the best courses of action that we can take to just embolden more Black people of this age range? And I think we may have touched on it before, but I think we're probably getting to a point where we can start wrapping the conversation up, unless we're going to have a part 2. What do you think is some of the things that we can do to embolden this age group to actually feel not obligated, but to feel compelled to go out and vote?
Probably examples. We need people that are going to actually be on the ground. They're going to be active politically, and they're going to make stuff happen. Cece had mentioned that I guess she ran to a boy at her office or whatever, and that's essentially what happened. Is he saw the tangible results of the tangible results of him participating in the political process, regardless of how we feel about it. He saw enough to where he was like, okay, he's going to participate again. But honestly, that depends on a lot of us older folks. I'm only 32. But, there's a lot of people that claim that they're leaders in our community that they don't lead us on that stuff. We have all these community leaders that don't, lead us in the right direction. They're not showing us how to economically maximize our dollars. They're not showing us how to take that maximization of money that we get from that and apply that politically to where we have meaningful power. We need people like that. We need people out there showing these individuals from the younger generation that it matters and that, something can come from it. That's why I said before, I understand the frustration. I understand a lot of these points that are being made because they're valid. I'm not going to argue that stuff. It's on us. No one's going to come save us. No one is. No one has ever come to save us. Ever. It's always going to be on us. So at the end of the day, for those of us that do know, John sounds like a very passionate and intelligent individual, from what I can tell. That's the type of person we need out there. like, you know, giving education on, you know, how this system works, like how we can use it to our advantage, how to avoid the loopholes, like how to get through the paperwork, how to, you know, spot the BS when you see it. We need people that are going to do that and that are going to help these kids in the future, our future, navigate this landmine that we call the United States.
Dude, I think that is a great point, and I think that is a good stopping point, because I feel like we could expound on this conversation and bring some more points, that some of the points that we all were like, oh, that's a whole nother conversation. That's a whole nother conversation. I think we need to have those conversations.
I have one more point to make. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna cut you off. I think we need to have those conversations. John says, can he make one more point? So John, I'm gonna let Bruce finish his point, and then we'll bring you on for your last one. And then I think Bruce, I think we can make this a part two, don't you think?
Works for me. I'll probably be a little bit better acclimated to this format, so I have a better, more cohesive argument to make.
Yeah. I know it's your first time doing it this way, but I still know that you know enough to have a really good conversation with. So go ahead and finish what you were saying, and we'll bring John back on for his last point, and then we'll wrap it up, Bruce.
Sure. I noticed that Karima has said, I do think it's important to still participate in local elections, etc. At the same time, we need to develop our own government somehow. And like,
I see that.
Okay. So for me, like, that's where it starts getting kind of, because, like, let's be pragmatic about that. That's not happening. Like, you're not gonna get, like first off,
we're not gonna have Wakanda in America.
Well, no, we're not ever. Like, the thing is, though, like, that's a whole other can of worms right there. Like, that's just not going to happen. I mean, like, you know, the closest we ever got to that was probably Reconstruction, and we see how that turned out. I just don't think that's a viable option. Like, that sounds great if, like, we were able to carve out our own little niche in the United States and form our own government, but that's not pragmatic. That's not. I just can't agree with that. And I see you say, why not? Well, oh boy. All right. So going back to your house example, right? So you own this house, like, you make the rules in this house. Like, you know, you're renting a space upstairs. Like, you pay rent, you got some say in this house. One day you decide, you know what? This room ain't even part of your house no more. It's my house. I'm gonna do what I want to do. How many people will let somebody come, like, in their house and make rules completely separate from what they deem the social contract? Like,
that's right.
You're gonna make your own government. Like, no, like, they call that a civil war.
Right.
That will not go well. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to work within and around the system that we have now. Like, as much as that sounds great, that's just not happening. Like, you want to talk about martial law and police and all this other stuff? Like, you want to see it really hit the fan? Try to do that. It ain't happening.
And we can't win that fight. We can't win that fight.
No, not at all. Even pragmatically speaking, we ain't got the numbers. Straight up. Like, if you want to be real, we don't have the numbers. We're
only 12% of the whole country. We don't have the numbers.
I dispute that census sometimes. I think we're a little more than that, but
it's still not enough.
We ain't got enough. And, you know, if you want to just be real about it, if people gel together based on their likes, and, like, you know, people hang out with people coagulate around that ain't a battle we gonna win. Like, I don't own no army. I don't own anything like that. I'm not a general. And she said that's done to the indigenous people by white people. Well, yeah. Thing is, that's history right there, because the reason why the Native Americans were wiped out was not only because of disease, but because of technological disadvantage and numbers. Like, they had no chance.
Right.
And even with our technological edge today, we ain't got a chance.
Right.
It's like, we gotta, God, I hate saying this. We gotta play by the rules a little. We gotta play the game a little bit. And unfortunately, to get ahead.
I understand that as Black people, we have to play by the rules. I mean, the the only people who were able to really defeat the people that were over them were like the Haitians. But I think the difference between us and the Haitians is that they were all together. They were all in the same situation. You know what I mean? And with us as black people today, there's so many black people who aren't in the same situation, to the point that it would be difficult for all of us to be cohesive enough to have the same objective, because there are some who are really bad, there's some who are really good. We're not all in the same space. Do you understand what I'm saying? I wonder if that would prohibit us from being able to even accomplish something like that, because like I said, back then, the Haitians, they were all in the exact same situation with the exact same goal. There was nobody that was way better than anybody else. They were all in the shit together. And we are not in that position right now. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, we're definitely not. Like I said before, we're not a monolith, man. Like I know, like we like to talk about, like, you know, the black community and everything like that. Like there is a general, like, obviously overlap between all of us. Like we obviously have the same skin color. We generally have the same history. We generally share the same ancestral history for the most part. But like all of us are not on the same page. And like, you know, with millions of people, you're gonna run into that. Like it's just not something that, you know, is a pragmatic thought. But like when it comes to the Haitians, like the Haitians had history, and they had luck on their side, honestly, because France was also fighting a war with Spain at the same time, and Britain. And honestly, the French couldn't be bothered. They got their ass up and they left. It was done. And honestly, even then, the Haitians are still paying France reparations for that. The only successful slave uprising in the entire, like in I guess African American or African slave uprising in history that was successful. Even then, they didn't escape the baggage from that. Yeah, and ultimately, that's just a whole other level of politics they got to deal with, because ultimately they don't got the power at that level. So I mean, all this stuff is it's levels to this.
I agree, Bruce. I agree. John, I'm going to put you on speaker. You can go ahead and make your final comment or question, and we'll start wrapping up the conversation, bro.
I was going to answer your question, because you said what could be done, or what policy, or what can you think of that would, you know, change the you know, the fate of African Americans, or African American, you know, black people in America. And I would say reparations. Like I think that's an easy. It's not a silver bullet. It's not going to fix everything. However, that's a start. Black people have been in this country for over, you know, almost 500 years, and they have the only advantage that I can think of off the top of my head, policy-wise, has been affirmative action, and that's been co-opted, you know, mostly by, you know, foreigners and white women. There's really, you know, in this nation's history, you really don't have a lot of policies that give the advantage to African Americans. I just think, like I said, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm not trying to like come at you, but like I researched this. Like this is what I'm into. I'm into politics. Honestly, the way I found you was through a political show. There's a guy named Tony Moore. He actually posted your homeless video on his Facebook. He talks about like a lot of stuff that I'm talking about, with like economics, and also like you know, what's really going on economically with African Americans, or, you know, black people in this country. He expounds on. He has like studies that go into in detail about, you know, the data, not just, you know, what he feels, but he's presenting the data of what's going on in the black community, and not just black community, but other communities, and showing you like the myths of, you know, what people believe is the remedy for, you know, helping black people in America. So honestly, I'm really frustrated. There's so much I could like dive into, because I'm on specific points, and a lot of things I heard were like generalities and cliches and like platitudes, and I just don't. That's one thing. Is another thing that black people have to get out of. you really got to start, like I said, controlling the narrative. And I agree, local elections are important, but they're important if you control the candidate. They're important if you're controlling the narrative. If you're not controlling the candidate or the narrative, then I'm going to say, like, if you don't vote, then I'm not going to say anything to you. There's no reason to shame you because basically that candidate doesn't have your interest. They're not talking to you. They're just trying to, use your vote to get into power. And then they're just going to discard you. Doug Jones got into power. And where has he done for black people? He's done a few platitudes. He's done, I think he put a few black women onto his staff. But what policies is he advocating for black people in Alabama? In Alabama, in that region, it's like one of the poorest regions in the nation. Like there was a article that showed that they don't even have plumbing. Like people were literally, going to the bathroom and had to throw their waste out in the woods. And that's in his district. But those same people voted for him. Like, this is why I say, like, you can't just say vote and then try to shame people. And I'm not saying shame, because me personally, I don't feel attacked at all. I really don't, I just really don't care. Like, you can say whatever. What I say, you're shaming people that, are not as politically educated, are not politically active. Because they're just going to hear criticism. They're not going to, and people don't respond to criticism. The woman left, and I could hear in her voice, she was saying, well, I do this, and I did this. But I would ask you specifically, what are you doing? Who are you advocating for? What are their policies? What are their policies for black people? Not, you're just doing stuff. You got to get out of that mode of, I'm just doing stuff, I'm politically active. What is your agenda? But that's all I got to say. I hope you do another, take of this because it definitely needs to be a conversation. It definitely needs to be expounded on a lot more.
I'll tell you what I'll do, John. I'll tell you what I'll do, John. I think Bruce and I both agree that you are very intelligent, articulate. You have research. You have some things to say, Bruce. I would like to have a part 2 of this conversation. Are you okay with that? And I would also consider John bringing you on the panel just so that we can have a conversation with you on the panel. Would you be okay with doing that?
That's cool.
All right. This is what I want you to do, John. If you can, put your Gmail in the chat, and then I'll email you, and we'll arrange a date and time for all of us to be on the panel, and we will have a part 2 of this conversation. All right.
Okay.
All right. Hey, I appreciate you calling in, John.
Hey, thanks, John.
All right, thanks.
I do.
All right.
I do. I have a couple things to say though.
Yeah, let's go ahead and give you a rebuttal to that, and then when we get done, Bruce, don't hang up because I want to try to arrange this next conversation. I feel like it'll be a really good one. I feel like we all have a lot of points to say, especially about reparation. I kind of have my. I kind of don't know about that.
Yeah, I got.
I mean, with reparation, man, that I realize one thing about reparation. I do realize a lot of other races have gotten reparations except for black people. Mm-hmm. We just be honest. That's just fact. A lot of other races have gotten reparations except for black people, and that is not technically. Of course, we know that is not the way things should be. Having said that. The question that will beg is, if we were to get reparations, who would it go to? And in giving it to certain people, what benefit would we get from that? Because the only way it would actually benefit us to get reparations is if the people who actually get reparations know what to do with the reparations that will benefit the race going forward. I mean, we can't just give reparations to everybody, and then everybody ends up with new rims and new trucks and junk like that. If we get reparations, it's going to have to be for us. We're going to have to use that for a specific purpose. And even using that money for a specific purpose, we're still giving the money to the economy of the house that we're all just being granted access to. So I don't know how you feel about that statement, but I'm not really sure how that will move us forward on a long-term scale.
Well, a couple things. I just before I answer that, I just want to be clear that nobody's shaming anybody. Like this is a panel that was put together because me like Keith and myself, like we have these conversations all the time. And my education is in political science. Like I'm not coming from a place of, hey, like I watched like CNN one day or Law and Order or something like that. Like I have a pretty good grasp, and I think Keith can attest to that, a pretty good grasp of how complex and layered the issues are regarding this particular topic. So I just don't want anyone to think that, we're shaming anybody. Like it's not what I'm trying to do, and I really don't think that's what CC probably intended to do. Another thing is like I just don't like making comparisons to other formats or other shows in this particular instance because I didn't come with all the stats that I could bring. I didn't come with, I really didn't come fully prepared at all. Like to me, this was an informal chat about a topic. Maybe in part two, Bruce will show up, and Keith knows that I will show up.
I do. I do.
And with that, like nobody's naive here at all. Like we all have informed opinions about these issues that affect us, and that's kind of where I'm keeping it. Like I'm not taking offense to it. It doesn't affect me one way or the other. I just wanted to clear the air and set that straight. Now on to reparations. Again, like I'm a pragmatist, and for me, like sometimes that does gel with my idealism, because at the end of the day, everybody here is idealistic, because if you weren't, you wouldn't have a goal in mind. Like you want something good to happen out of these conversations. You want Black people to advance and grow and prosper and thrive. We're all idealistic in some aspect, but at the end of the day, I made the point earlier, like it's probably like the third time I made it, is that none of these leaders just show up in a vacuum. Like there's a whole process, and the vast majority of us don't even start at the very beginning of the process. I mean, we can talk about Doug Jones in Alabama. I mean, yeah, of course he's going to give us a bunch of platitudes. Hell, we weren't even involved in the process to get him where he was to even run in the first place. Like we didn't even know if there could have been a better African-American candidate that could have represented the state. We don't know if anyone even tried. Like I personally don't know about that because I didn't keep up with Alabama from that perspective. But that's where that happens. Like I guess that's the lab. Like that's where those people come from. So, if we're not involved in that aspect, I mean, really, what can anyone complain about the leadership we do get that tries to represent us? But back to reparations. I don't think that's pragmatic today. Do I think it's something that needs to happen? Absolutely. The United Nations even said that we're due reparations. It's something that's been voted on several times in the United Nations Human Rights Council, that African Americans are due reparations. I'll never dispute that point, but just from like a practical standpoint, that's not happening. I would love for it to, but it's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen probably in our lifetimes, like if it does happen. Would I love to work towards that? Absolutely. And I'm going to hit this cliche on you. One way to do that is to get people in office that represent your viewpoints to make that happen. Because if it was going to happen, it's going to happen in Congress. Who controls the purse strings? Who controls the budget? Who controls all treasury items? Congress. So if we're going to get paid any form of reparations, it's got to go through them. So if we're going to play that game, then we need people playing that game with us at that level that are going to be like, no, we need this and we need to do this. It took them over 100 years to apologize for slavery. 100 years. This is a Congress full of old white men. 100 years to apologize for it. It'll take us another 150 years from to ever consider even giving us what we're due for everything that our ancestors dealt with. So, I mean, that's part of the economics we're talking about. All that's intermingled. Like, get people in place to where they're going to represent our interest. And that is a generality for the sake of this conversation, pretty much.
Hey, I think that is a good point to wrap up this conversation. Part of this conversation, John, I don't think I've seen your Gmail. Make sure you give me your Gmail. If you don't give it to me before we end this live stream, comment it on the video. Give me your Gmail, or you can either just either comment to me on the video, or just do it in Gmail right now, or in the chat right now. All right, guys, the chat has been really active, so thank you guys so much for being involved in the chat. I feel like we had a really good conversation. I think it will be even better for the second part. So yeah, Bruce. Also, guys, I'm gonna have a discussion with Bruce. A lot of one thing I respect about Bruce a lot of black men talk about how we should do this to help other black men, and we should do that. Bruce talks about that, but then he also does it. Bruce has been offering a class to people to teach people how to write code, and I've been learning from him, and a bunch of my friends have been learning from him. So he is one of the guys that are out here, but one of the black men who are out here saying, well, I want to help the community. And not only does he say it, he is also doing it. So if anyone out there doubts, I don't know why you should, but if you do, I can personally say that Bruce has helped me and several other black men to try to educate us on something that will put a whole lot of money in our pockets and put us on a whole different level to be able to do a whole lot more stuff. So we're going to have a conversation with Bruce about that specifically. I think that may be within the next week or two, maybe next week. But we're going to go ahead and get this part 2 popping, because I feel like there's people who are really commenting that this is so important. Karima Ali, thank you for being so active in the chat. And everybody, Great Dane, thank you for coming through. John, I really appreciate you calling in and having your points. If you're going to be on the panel, make sure you have all those points ready, because Bruce is not somebody to be messed with when it comes to this political stuff. He knows his stuff. The panel will be ready. So yeah, guys, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up here, and then make sure you click the bell, because there have been a few people who are saying they get the notification that the show starts a little bit late, and it may be because YouTube doesn't always send out the notification on time, and sometimes it doesn't at all. So make sure you click the bell, and if you haven't already, like the video so we can get so many more people in here so we can have a larger conversation, all right? Bruce, my brother, thank you so much for coming on the show. Don't hang up after I start the broadcast so we can go ahead and arrange this next one. Okay. And guys, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you all on the next one. I'll let everybody know when this next one is going to be, so please tune in. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. All right. Thanks a lot, Bruce. All right. Peace, guys.